Thank you very much, and wonderful to connect to all of you here in Delhi. My congratulations to BCF for 25 years of connecting businesses and communities and doing amazing work that you have done. It always feels great, inspiring to be among people who are enthusiastic and are on the solution side of the line. I bring you all warm greetings from an otherwise cold region, and I have many messages to deliver firsthand about what happens across the mountains when we live the lives we live in the big cities. And I'll share some solutions also that we all are capable of, and we in the mountains are pushed to for no fault of ours, with all the climate change and its impacts touching our lives up in the mountains. We decided we shouldn't sit hand on hand lying down, but rather when going gets tough, tough get going. So adversities, challenges sometimes can be the best stimulus for responses that more than solve problems and sometimes become an inspiration for others, because it is in adversities that best models are set, examples are set, and shall I say we are lucky to be very rich in adversities and challenges. I could call Ladakh the capital of all the challenges of the world, as you see. And we would like that we are not alone in facing these challenges that are not just ours, but rather of the whole planet, of the whole humanity, and all the sentient beings on this planet. So I would like to engage and involve you all in thinking of solutions, to think of impact rather than incomes only. We do our business. Think of people, think of not just people, but all other living beings and non-living landscapes and the beauty of this planet. When we do our business, we should think of the consequences that they have. And only then we are playing by the rules. Otherwise, we are creating more problems than solving. So I'll take you on a little pictorial journey of the mountains for you to place yourselves and understand a little better of what I shall be talking about and relate better, because when we are talking about a place like Ladakh, it's actually not a very normal planet. Very, very unusual part of this, not only the country, but of the whole planet. Let me start by placing it on the map. You see that Ladakh is up there, top north of our country. Top north often to many means in the Himalayas, but actually Ladakh is beyond the Himalayas, across the Himalayas. Himalayas are rather lush and green, like Kashmir and Himachal, Shimla and Nepal and so on. We, on the other hand, are in the Trans-Himalayas. And when you are in the Trans-Himalayas, it's a totally different world altogether. Very fragile, very environmentally sensitive, and at great heights. The average human habitation is at around 11,000 feet, going up to 14,000 feet. And when you are across the Himalayas, it's in the rain shadow of the Indian subcontinent. So, unlike Shimla or Kashmir, it is actually a cold desert, the roof of the world, as some people say, a plateau that high, and it actually appears or resembles more to the moon or the Mars than planet Earth. Because across the Himalayas, when you are in the rain shadow of the Himalayas, there's very little of monsoon clouds that are able to cross normally, but now that even is changing a little bit. So it's a dry desert, much like Mars or Moon. Open my windows in the morning, it looks more like Mars than planet Earth. This, by the way, is a picture of Mars, not that just to but it's not very different from what I do see as I open my windows in the morning. And this is actually what I see. No pranks here. Except for these little signs of human activity, it starkly resembles the picture that you saw in the previous one. And a few clouds you can see now. With climate change and temperatures rising, clouds rise higher, and now they're able to cross. It otherwise is more like outer space than on planet Earth. We are actually 11,500 feet closer to outer space. And it behaves like that. You can see the temperature swings from plus 35 to minus 35. This is one place on the Earth where they say you could have a sunburn at the same time if your head is in the sun and feet in the shade in winters, like outer space. But what I'm most proud of in this landscape are these little patches of greenery that you see. This is what our ancestors did to this part of the planet. Though desolate, stark desert, they make this their home. It has only 4 inches of rainfall annually, which is a desert, definition of a desert. But they didn't run away. They were rather very creative. Went behind those mountains you see and found what could be called fossilized water from hundreds, if not thousands of years ago. And these would be called glaciers today. So it keep these farms and the people as they melt in spring with the warmth, and a trickle comes down, and our ancestors carved sheer rock faces to make canals to bring this trickle to dry patches of sandy desert, and magic started happening. The magic of crops like barley, wheat, peas, potatoes, and all kinds of leafy alpine vegetables, fruits like apricots, apples, peaches, plums, grapes, and so on. So I grew up admiring how smart and wise they have been in making it possible to not only survive, but for a colorful civilization to thrive with its own language, literature, music, dance, spirituality, and a lifestyle that is in harmony with nature. This is one place where living in harmony with nature is not a luxury. This is a basic qualification to survive and thrive here. So that's what I grew up learning to admire, lifestyle that is evolved to respect nature and never demand more than what you need. But Today, this beautiful balance is challenged again with global warming. Our glaciers are melting away very fast, and they are not going silently. They're causing, yes, droughts that are punctuated by floods every now and then. So I wanted to bring to you in big cities like New Delhi, Mumbai, New York, London, Paris, Beijing, the first-hand story of what is happening on the peripheries of this planet, in the high Himalayas, and of course by the oceans, you would know as sea levels rise. But I come from the mountains, so I thought of sharing this first-hand message to move us into living in ways that can be sustained by the planet and that can ensure a life for our generations that are yet to come. So, this is its mountains. As I flew from Lyon, I took a picture of the mountains, and you can see, if you see carefully, how important it is for especially the Indian subcontinent. Hindu Kush Himalayas, of which Ladakh is a part, is home to roughly 50,000 glaciers and is often called the third pole after the north and the south pole. It is the largest reservoir of fresh water after the two poles, frozen in these mountains in the form of glaciers. Just this one single casual picture captures roughly 10 glaciers. You look carefully. But these glaciers are now melting faster than they are forming. They always melted, and that's good. That's why we are able to survive there. But now the balance is in the negative. More is melting than is forming. And this is one close-up of a glacier, or the Drumdrum Glacier. As a teenager, I used to go to Zanskar region and admire the magnificence of this glacier, a towering glacier from across the road. Today, it's a shadow of itself as it melts in the heat of changing climate and local human activity as well. Global warming and local human activity together. And as these glaciers melt, as I said, they don't go quietly nowadays. Pay attention to the lower end of the glacier, which is often called the snout. It becomes torrents at this end as the glacier is melting, while torrents start flowing from the glaciers, and these can be dangerous when they become flash floods, when they melt very fast together with rains and so on. Let me show you some images and a little story. This is what a flash flood is when a village is drowned in kind of mud soup coming down from the mountains. In 2006, this village called Lyon had a violent flash flood which washed away many houses and farms. And I went there with some of my students as a volunteer. This is one first-hand story and message I wanted to share with you what's happening up there. That was 2006. We helped the villagers, but curious as I am, I started asking people, how often does this happen? Have you seen one before? Of course, most people didn't know much, so I looked for the oldest person around, and I found a person in his 80s and asked, sir, when did you see an event like this before? And he said, I don't remember. I only heard such stories from my elders, but haven't seen one. That was 2006. The next one after that was 2010, 4 years later, when roughly 1,000 lives were lost. Quarter of Leh city was washed away. Lot of damage, just 4 years later. And the next one was 2013. And the next one was 2017. Something that the old man had never seen in his life is happening this frequently. So the frequency of these events has increased, and these flash floods are alternated or punctuated only by droughts, because every time you have a cloudburst or heavy rain, which is happening now, as I said, as temperatures rise, clouds rise higher. And when clouds rise higher, they're able to cross the barriers of the Himalayas. And when they are on mountains with other conditions coming together, they can cause cloudbursts. And when that happens, it washes all the little vegetation that there are on the hills and all the fine soils, clays in the hills. That's why it's a mudslide. All the fine material is coming down, going into the Arabian Sea. So it robs the hill slopes of anything that is fine, that can hold water like a sponge. No vegetation, no fines. What it means is that the next rainfall doesn't have to be as big as the last one to cause the flash flood. So even smaller ones can, and therefore the frequency. But as I said, on one hand, I want to appeal to people around the world to change their lifestyles from the strength of our own commitment rather than just begging them to do so. We, on our part, have been doing everything that we could do in the mountains rather than just taking it. For the last 30 years or so, I have been personally involved in adapting or mitigating climate change, educating the people, especially the young, about new ways of life that we may have to adopt. So, yeah, we started in the 90s this alternative school, mainly for those who were failing, and that's why the admission criteria of this school is famously failure in the system, conventional exams rather than grades and marks and so on. If you have great grades, you could be on the waiting list. But if you have failed, you are quite likely to get admission here. Because failure and success in a flimsy system doesn't mean much. Those who have failed are no different from those who have topped, really. In life, you see that those who topped may not top in life, and those who have failed may not fail in life. And that's why perhaps the biggest businesses in the world are perhaps owned by some of these so-called failures, and they then employ the toppers, many of them. Anyway, I won't go into that today, but just to say that we started this school as a response to whatever was needed in the region, in the context of the mountains, to respond to challenges that we have, preparing young people, not just for degrees and jobs, but to respond to challenges for impact and so on. So this school campus was very special, from the admission criteria to how and what we tried to learn together with the students to live lightly on the planet. And therefore the school itself was built with natural materials like soil, earth, found right under your feet, abundant, free of cost, and heated and powered by the sun, found right over your heads, abundant, free of cost. Nobody is so poor who cannot afford earth or sun. Abundant for all, rich and poor. Only thing it takes is a bit of human ingenuity to bring it together, and you could live happily ever after in shelters, houses, homes you build. So that's what we started learning here, and that's why we made this school an example of how people could live happily, even in the harshest environments. Almost everything at this school happens with the power of the sun, from cooking, which is done by large concentrating mirrors, to greenhouses that grow fresh green vegetables in -20 winters, natural lighting of the houses, so you don't need coal-fired or hydro-powered lighting, at least in the day. And for the night, if you do need lighting, then you have solar electricity. In mid-90s, it was new and rare. Solar water heating, students would make or put to use their science lessons to create these. Solar water pumping with the sun. Even the cows at this school campus, which we have several, live in solar heated cow sheds. Why only humans? Why not the cows also? And very interestingly, the cows reciprocated generously. The year we built these solar heated cow sheds for our cows, as if to say thank you, they doubled their milk production. And we were all surprised. They are so grateful, how come? And they sense, but it was actually biology lessons from their textbooks in 9th and 10th grade. You know, warm-blooded animals and cold-blooded animals. So we used it to learn about them. Warm-blooded animals need a certain body temperature, unlike cold-blooded. So cows and we humans need to keep our bodies at +37. 1 degree higher or lower will kill us with fever or hypothermia. You may not think, but we really have to keep our body temperatures. And the poor cows, when it is -10 in the cow shed, which usually happens, they have to keep their huge mass at +37. Where would the energy come from? Their food. If their food goes into keeping their bodies warm, how do you expect milk? But if you give that warmth by cheaper, easier means like solar heated cow shed, then magic happens. Their food, part of their food converts into milk, and hence the generosity of the cow. So you learn biology in these ways also. Science and mathematics, geography, all of these translate into innovations that revolve around the mountain context. Earth, sun, ice, and fire. So earth is what these buildings are built with. Sun is what keeps them warm. And you can see down there how 9th grade chapter on heat in physics comes alive for the children when they live or when they help build one of these buildings. You can see how in the greenhouse the sun heats the air and the hot air rises, that's convection, and goes into the upper floor, gives its heat to the cold walls, making them warm, but it itself cools down, which means it's heavier, so it sinks and is pushed into the greenhouse again, and again it's heated, and the cycle continues all day without any power pollution, power bill, no moving parts, just nature's machinery, which is called convection. So rather than memorizing it, you apply it in these buildings, and when you close the windows at night, the walls that have warmed up start radiating. That's radiation, convection, radiation. And the southern walls, which receive heat in the midday, particle by particle transfer their heat, and it reaches at midnight, which is when you need heat. That's conduction. So conduction, convection, radiation happens all around you. And that's why we say, rather than scolding your students for forgetting their lessons, let's make their lessons unforgettable, so they can't forget these. Now, what these mean for a cold region like Ladakh is that when it is minus 20 outdoors in January, it's plus 18 indoors, which is quite comfortable, way warmer than houses in Delhi in January. I have a joke that I always tell about Delhi. In January, whenever I come down from Ladakh to Delhi, I feel very cold. And a Ladakhi says that about Delhi. And it's true. I have to scramble for blankets and things because it's much warmer in these houses in Ladakh than Delhi, where it is plus 10 outside and not very different indoors, unless you use heaters. And a little bit of high school geography about the orientation of the building and the placement of sun in winter and summer as it rises from the southern sky to overhead in summer. If you keep these in mind when you design your school, children learn geography along the way, and it becomes a house that is warmest in winter and the coolest in summer also. So that's the beauty of nature and what we could learn. Students here live partly these modern sciences and chapters, but partly they live a rural lifestyle, which is very beautiful balance. You have these very warm buildings in the background, which I would say are beyond modern. Modern are perhaps those in New York, London, New Delhi. But this is beyond modern because it does the same, plus 20, plus 18, but does no harm to nature, to the planet. Whereas in New York, they keep the house warm, but at the cost of the planet. So that's why we say we shouldn't talk about just sustainable development. It's time we talk about regenerative development, restorative development, because when you are fallen, to sustain would be to stay fallen. We need now healing, so we have to live in ways that restores and heals our planet. So what happens with an example? If we, like all other Ladakhi people, burned the wood from the trees or the dung from the yaks and animals to make heat in the house, we would be perfectly sustainable because it's trees that we grew, not from a forest. It's dung from animals that we raise, so it can sustain. But when we use solar heated houses and do not cut the branches of the trees, do not collect the dung, it goes back to nature, becomes manure for plants, and then it enriches nature. That is restorative, beyond sustainable. So that's when flowers and bees and birds smile and thank you. So that's the kind of development we need to go towards in the coming years. But unfortunately, parallelly, we see this in the mainstream development model happening just half an hour away in the Leh city. This is the morning in Leh city. You can see all the smoke and smog arising from all the houses as they heat. Rather than adapt to nature, they go on with the fire. Now people have more money, so they burn more, and this is what the air becomes. And to solve these outside the school, we were doing only at our school. That was simpler and children could do it for themselves. But now to solve and extend these solutions to the rest of the world, we are starting an alternative university after the alternative school. Because young people in universities could actually change the world. It's a crime to make them sit in classrooms, listen to lectures and pass exams. That's the age when you can change the world. So we said, why not a doers and makers? 70% of your learning happens outdoors, and only 30% of lectures from elders and wise people. Good to guide, but you have to act. So this is Himalayan Institute of Alternatives, Ladakh, Hayal, which we are working on now, which is happening in this total desert, same village where I volunteered and saw the flood. And we hope to turn it into a green oasis using various technologies developed in the mountains. I won't go into details, but maybe a few I'll share. And at this place, we are hoping to take these solutions to other institutions, other people, and beyond Ladakh. We're actually now in Afghanistan, Mongolia, Nepal, partnering to bring these solutions to other mountain people. It's a mountain university for mountain solutions. And these solar heated shelters, we have been researching and developing new technologies. Now we share it with other agencies like Indian Army, uses these houses that we build for them at 15,000 feet at zero border where it's minus 30 degrees, and they can be carbon, zero emission, no fire, no fuel, no import of oil from Qatar and Saudi Arabia, draining our exchequer, polluting our environment, emissions into the greenhouse gases and so on into the environment. Zero of that and still comfortable. That's what is possible. That's impact. And you can make it into business also. Future businesses will have to consider not just income but impact. Now, this university actually, as I said, 70% outdoors means students will have to apply what they learn. So it has an enterprise arm where what is researched is taken out and applied. So enterprise arm takes solutions to others and makes a margin of business along the way, a surplus. And if your research and skills can generate income, then you do not need to charge fees from students. So this is one institute that aims to actually pay the students rather than charge them. Young people in their 20s shouldn't be paying money. They should be doing things for which they are paid. So this enterprise in solar solutions to keep the environment healthy actually is very profitable. We started 2 years ago. Last year it was $1 million turnover. This year we expect $3 million. And the surplus, the margin left, is what runs the School of Energy Studies. So that's how we finance this kind of institution, and that's what we hope future universities would do. And it's an amazing solution for soldiers on the border, where soldiers as well as officers can have a warm, comfortable living in the harshest climate of these mountains. And it's a blend of tradition, architecture, and technology. We are building such shelters in the coldest places, at least definitely of the country, maybe most of the world, places like Terra. And the beauty is that you can solve more than your own problem. These heated houses that you saw use the straw from Punjab to make bricks that make these houses that don't need any fire. So we rescue the straw from Punjab where it is otherwise burned, cutting pollution once in Punjab, emission and pollution, take it to Ladakh on high density load trucks which have a lot of empty space, we bring it to Ladakh. There it meets mountain clays of Ladakh, and together with clay and straw, you make blocks or bricks that make houses that don't need fire. So cutting pollution a second time in Ladakh. What could be more beautiful than that? So all this is possible if we, rather than just aping, copying other countries who have other problems for our country, we solve them in our context, what we need in the mountains. And that way then others want your solutions, like I said, from Afghanistan to various countries that want. Similarly, when it comes to glaciers that are melting away, a few years ago, together with my students, we said if the natural glaciers are going away, let's try making our own kind of artificial baby glaciers, I would say. This is how a typical Ladakhi village is. Farms along the stream that comes from the glaciers on the right and goes into the Indus to the left, and then finally into the Arabian Sea. So these streams have only a trickle in springtime when farmers really need water. So that's the bottleneck in farming in Ladakh. But come summer, there's actually floods in these streams. Too much water, July, August. And this flow continues into autumn and even winter. There is a flow which nobody uses because there is no farming. So we said this winter flow is just going waste. We can freeze it and keep it till summer. People laugh. How can you keep winter snow or ice into summer? By March everything melts. So we used a little bit of middle school geometry this time to help us to keep January ice into June. Middle school geometry was that, if you remember, in geometry, there are surfaces that have minimal surface area for the volume, like spheres. Spheres have minimal, like drops, low surface area, high volume. Similarly, even cones, hemispheres have the same. So we said, why don't we make the ice in one of these shapes? Low surface area, high volume. Why? Low surface area so that the sun doesn't get. Sun wants surface area to melt. People don't care about surface area, they care about volume. So high volume, low surface area for the sun to melt. And that's how we wanted to build our ice in large giant cones or pyramids. But again, that's easier said than done. Pyramids, ask the Egyptians. No? Easier said than done. So while the Egyptians had to push their solid blocks of rock, we were lucky to have a liquid material, water, and we wanted to make a solid pyramid. So we would use the liquid properties first and then freeze it mid-air. Liquids are easier to move in pipes. So all it takes is a pump to raise the liquid 10, 15 stories and then make it freeze. But again, easier said than done. Where do you get pumps and power in these high mountains? We neither had the pumps, nor the fuel, nor the money. But rather than always mourning about what you don't have, you have to look around at what you do have. What we had this time, like sun in the previous days, or soil, which everybody has, in abundance. We have gravity in abundance. In the mountains, by definition, there is gradient, upstream to downstream. So you just put a pipe upstream and bring it downstream in a pipe. And primary school science says water will always maintain its level. The outlet will want to be same as the inlet. But because the inlet is higher in the valley, the outlet will be under pressure to go to the same height. And with this pressure, if you put a fountain, it will spray water into the cold air, into the -20 air. And when water sprays in -20, it loses its heat and becomes solid. This heat, if you remember, is called latent heat in your ninth grade science. So this is what happens. Water with no pumps, power, expensive pollution, sprays into -20 air and falls down solid, forms a cone almost by itself, somewhat like 3D printing, I would say. And this was 6 stories tall, contained 1 million liters of water. And we wanted to see if our hypothesis was right, whether it stays longer in the summer or not. After all, this proof of the ice is in not melting. So we had bets. Some said will last till end of April, end of May. I was perhaps the boldest one to say end of May. And these lasted, okay, I don't seem to have that image here. This first one lasted till mid-June. And slowly giving it water, roughly 50,000 liters every day. When there was not a drop on the deserts in the village, everybody fought for every drop. At that time, you have the winter water dripping 50,000 liters, and you could plant trees and so on. Slowly, this became a movement from that 1 million liters to 3 million liters to a cascading valley of ice cubes. You can see that little person in the center to have an idea of size and a kind of movement. This one that you see on the left was made by villagers, much bigger than anything we could do. This is half the height of the Qutub Minar and contains 12 million liters of water that will slowly melt. Yeah? And now it's spreading into not only various villages of Ladakh, but neighboring Pakistan, Nepal, several European countries, and as we speak, some of our colleagues from Ladakh are returning from Chile in the Andes in South America, where they were helping them. So it's a kind of reverse technology transfer almost. And this got us the Rolex Award for Enterprise, which is fine. It was good to have it because it had a good sum of money with it, and that's the money which seeded the alternative university. I contributed it as the seed fund and then started a crowdfunding because we wanted to make it a people's university, not with big money from government, but from school children contributing their lunches and their expenses, and then companies later through CSR and so on. But these are not solutions we are proud of. We are doing our individual little solutions in the mountains. They won't change Ladakh. 2 things will change. One is your lifestyle in the big cities of the world, not just New Delhi, but all the big cities where it all starts. Greenhouse gases, climate change, and we suffer. First of all, you will too, but we, for no fault of ours, have to go through all the challenges. So, firstly, we need a solution from the people of the world by changing their lifestyle. Secondly, governments have to bring changes in policies to safeguard and protect such sensitive areas. So, if some of you may remember, some 7 months ago, I came out with a video calling the Prime Minister and people of the country to pay attention to Ladakh, as all is not well there, climatically. And as Ladakh has now become a union territory, there is nothing safeguarding its fragile mountains and glaciers from industrialists and mining companies and mega scale hotels and so on, and in no time this place will be lost, and with it will be lost the source of water for 1 billion people on the Indian subcontinent. 1.9 billion people depend on Himalayan glaciers, directly or indirectly, and half of it is in the in northern Indian subcontinent. Yeah? So it will be not easy for all of us. So therefore, Ladakh has been demanding safeguarding of the nature and the people and their culture through constitutional means. There is a provision in the Indian Constitution that protects scheduled areas, tribal, indigenous regions, giving the locals all the power to decide how far they want to take, rather than be, taken by industrial lobbies and bureaucrats and so on. It gives people a platform to express their views and go only as far as they want. And this provision, Ladakh deserves and has been demanding for a long time. It only takes 50% indigenous population to be under this 6th schedule. Ladakh has 97% indigenous tribal population. And the government itself had promised it. Various public forums, and it has been on top on the manifesto of the ruling party, third point in the parliamentary elections, and the topmost in the Hill Council elections, which is even more prestigious in Ladakh. Yeah? The first one is constitutional safeguard under 6th schedule. So, in the gap of 3 years, the ruling party promised twice to Ladakh people that we will protect the region under 6th schedule. But that never happened. Despite government arms agencies like National Commission for Scheduled Tribes putting it down in their minutes, saying that Ladakh fully deserves this and we are going to do it. But then it didn't happen, despite all the promises, all our calls, and I had to go on a climate fast to press this, to make the voice heard on behalf of not just the people but the glaciers and the birds and the bees of Ladakh, all of them. So I was for 5 days in January in minus 25 degrees outdoors fasting, 5 days, so that our voice be heard. We thought it was heard, but nothing much changed, although it was a promise of the government. Then by June, I had to again remind them all is still not well, and had to go for 9 days of total fast, climate fast, in the heat, this time in the heat of summer, when it was so hot that with my remote sensing thermometer, my blanket was 85 degrees plus. Yeah, it was not possible to put my feet on the blanket, that hot. And we were not just asking governments to change their policies. We were equally asking people to change their lifestyles. You can see I Live Simply movement is a movement started from Ladakh to urge to the people of the world to live simpler lifestyles so that we in the mountains of Ladakh, Nepal, Arunachal, all these regions do not suffer from no fault of ours. And it was nothing political also. On one hand, we were reminding government to fulfill their promises, people to live simpler lifestyles, and even supporting and promoting Prime Minister Modi's campaign called Mission Life, which is almost exactly same as I Live Simply movement at a global level, started in COP26. The other one was 5 years ago. So Mission Life is also a lifestyle change. So it was not about regional, political, etc. Just to safeguard our water sources, our water towers, and not punish the people living there. Well, this is not the end, and we'll see how and where it goes. Meanwhile, thank you very much for paying attention and work together. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you so much. What an inspirational talk, and I think a real talk, not just the talk but action. So one big round of applause for Mr.